I had updated you that the board considered the CBE's recommendation between what was then option 1, the break-even proposal, and option 2, which was a more modest set of increases. The board's inclination was similar to that of the committee, such that the board wanted something close to option 1, but recognizing that there were some opportunities, some need in certain instances to go away from the total break even. So what we showed you at the June meeting was the proposal that was then going to go out for public comment. It was a proposal that left about $1 million still in expenditures exceeding revenues, which we were going to be addressing with the cost reduction models, which Amy and or Audrey will be talking about in just a bit. So we sent out.
So we're talking about the bar exam cost reduction?
Yes.
Okay, well, on the screen we have the admissions fee.
They're just related. We're talking about the admissions fee.
We're talking about the admissions fee, all of it.
Okay.
So the admissions fees went out for public comment. There were, for this second round of public comment, there were 266 commenters, 177 were folks currently studying law or preparing to take the bar exam, 63 attorneys, and 8 who identified themselves as a law school administrator or faculty. There were, as you recall, 3 different segments of the proposal that went out. One was fees for law study and exams. One was fees related to special admissions, and one was fees relating to the fees that are charged to law schools. I'm not going to give you the breakdown of all of the 266 public comments received and how those divided across the different 3 areas. As was the case with the first round of public comment, I don't think anybody would be surprised to hear that a significant majority of the comments were opposed to fee increases. What I did want to specifically talk to you about, and if you've got specific questions, I'm happy to talk about some of the key themes in any of the areas, but when we were talking to the board earlier this month about the cost reduction models, we also gave them an update on what we knew so far about the public comment on these fee increases. And one of the comments that we had highlighted was a comment from the law schools, from the CALs, that were suggesting that there might be a fairer way to increase the fees, to achieve the fee increase on the annual report and the inspections, that would use a similar formula that we do for the unaccredited, which is have a tier. So the smaller schools would pay a smaller amount. The bigger the school, the bigger the amount that they would pay. The proposal from the CALs obviously opposed to a fee increase at all, but said, should you in fact need to do a fee increase, there should be a fairer way to do it that doesn't so much more heavily impact the students, because these fees will likely be passed on to students from smaller schools. And so we presented that to the board, and the board did ask staff to present to them when we come back in September to the board with a model that shows the same amount of revenue that we would get, but dividing the CALs into tiers based on the enrollment size, the same way that we do with the unaccredited schools. And so that's going to be the primary change from what you saw in June in terms of what's going to go to the Board of Trustees at their September meeting. We will also be analyzing the savings from the cost reduction models to see if that changes anything about the fee increase proposal. And so that would be the only other thing that we might present to the board as something where a change might be needed to address what we're able to achieve with the cost reduction model. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but we just wanted to give you that status update on the fee proposal, the fee increase proposal that was out for a 30-day public comment.
Any questions? So when you put these numbers and new numbers into the model, does it result in a full recovery of costs, or is there a deficit that remains by modeling with the spreadsheet?
So yeah, so the spreadsheet resulted in $1 million, $1 million of expenditures still exceeding revenue. That's why we went forward with the cost reduction model, and putting the two together, ideally we should be able to eliminate the the extent to which the expenditures exceed revenue.
Okay, and I don't know if it's been mentioned to this group, but I understand that you decided that it wasn't possible to go to the half in person, half online modality for February because there just wasn't time to be able to implement that. Is that correct?
Yeah, and Amy and Audrey will talk about that when they get to that item in the director's report, specifically the cost reduction model.
I was confused. I thought you were covering both, but any other questions for Donna? Okay, why don't we then go to that C, the bar exam cost reduction models, since I teed up one of the questions there.
Yeah, and obviously they're very related. So Viviana, if you could just back it up to the cost reduction part, and Amy can take it away. You see it? It's like slide 4.
All right, thank you.
Oops.
Uh-oh. There we go. All right, so let me start by reminding the committee on what we're addressing in this proposal. So if you could go to the next slide, please. As we've noted, we presented multiple times to the committee about the fee increase proposal and the state of the admissions budget. And the current proposal for increases to admissions fees still result in expenditures exceeding our projected revenue by 1.04 million, as you can see here. So we're exploring cost saving measures to help address this budget gap. Next slide, please. We talked about this at our last meeting, that our focus is going to be on the California bar exam. It's the single largest expenditure outside of personnel cost. And the plan that we've set forth, and the plan that you've seen at the last meeting, applies lessons that we've learned after having administered 3 remote bar exams and 7 remote administrations of the first-year law student exam. And so I want to remind everybody about the models that we presented here to the CBE in June. Can we go to the next slide, please? So these were the 4 separate models that we talked about. So the first is as is, that is keeping the number of sites and the modality the same. I'll skim through these since we spoke to them in in great detail at the last meeting. The 6-site model is reducing the exam to 6 sites and staying as an in-person administration. 3 sites are dedicated to TA and 3 standard sites. Those 3 standard sites would also host testing accommodation applicants. Limiting to 6 sites reduces or eliminates the sites in Sacramento, Oakland, or San Diego. Under this model, the estimated annual savings is about $855,500. And this is for both February and July. The third model here, the 6 sites with 1-day remote, in this proposal, the idea is to have the MBE administered in person, given that we have to, under the direction of the National Conference of Bar Examiners. The essays and PT would be administered remotely. We would use the same sites that are noted in the 6-site model, which eliminates, again, Sacramento, Oakland, and San Diego. And the cost savings is higher. It's about $1.5 million. The one thing about this model is that it yields a higher cost savings, but there's another factor that has to be weighed in here, and that is that we'd have to reorganize the exam days. And we talked about that at the last meeting. So what the reason we'd have to reorganize that is that we would need to allow sufficient time for applicants to travel, whether it's to the test or back, in order to be able to test remotely for the next portion of the exam. And so the days of the exam would have to be revisited. And the fourth model here is similar to the model I just described, with the exception that we would be using the state bar offices rather than in lieu of some of the two TA sites. And those offices would be used for TA. So one in San Francisco and one in Los Angeles, both downtown. The estimated cost savings here is about $1.8 million. And since we presented this, there were some changes. Can you go on to the next slide, please? Also at that meeting, the committee voted for the 4 sites model with a 1-day remote. So since that meeting in June, staff have explored other possibilities that were presented to the board last week. As you may recall, the CBE directed us to explore the potential for free space available to us. And we have identified space that is available and appropriate for us to use that's free of charge. Also, staff have identified space that's available. The sale of the San Francisco building has also created uncertainties about the use of space. Space may need upgrades. The timing of the ownership change, has created some uncertainties that have made us explore other options. And as you may recall, when we administered the bar exam remotely in 2020 and in 2021, the state bar was unable to provide remote testing to applicants to all applicants, especially those that have incompatible testing accommodations with the software that we use, the software vendor for remote testing. And so staff would like more time to explore methods that would allow remote testing for all applicants. And that's why we have a recommended change to go from 2 remote bar administrations in 2024, and rather to a February in-person with the potential to test remotely in July. Can we go to the next slide, please? So sites were selected on a variety of factors. So the recommendation that went to the board was to have, for February 2024 at least, an in-person exam at 7 sites. And the sites were selected based on the availability of facilities that have enough seating capacity. So we sought sites with sufficient seating capacity, like the super sites that we described at the last meeting. So the idea is to keep those super sites, and that includes Ontario, that seats 2,300 people, Pasadena seats 1,800, and the Cow Palace that seats 2,600. Cost was another factor. So we seek venues that provide adequate space, lighting, parking, address our security needs, and conform to our floor layouts, and that can accommodate ideally standard and TA applicants at the same location, and that stay within our price range. And so in that process, we also plan to still use the State Bar office in Los Angeles for our testing accommodation applicants. And in San Francisco, we've identified a space at the Judicial Council in downtown San Francisco. And that space does not provide enough for people testing in private and semi-private rooms. And so we have added a testing space for TA in Sacramento as a result of that.
Does that have a location in San Diego?
No, it does not. And so that is one of the challenges. So one of the reasons that San Diego was not considered when we proposed the initial super sites models is the amount of space that's available to us in San Diego. So we're seeking these large locations because it helps us even be efficient with our staffing. And so for San Diego, it's been challenging for us to identify space that can sit the same amount of applicants that we've identified in Ontario. Also in July, State Bar competes against big events like Comic-Con. It's very hard for us to find space in San Diego. And the demand was also factored in here. The historical demand for seating in San Diego has gone down a bit. Typically, we reserve spots in San Diego for only San Diego residents. We prioritize those spots to local applicants. However, this past July and the February exam, we've had to open it to non-San Diego residents because the space was not filling up. However, after receiving public comments and discussion at last week's board meeting, the board raised concerns about not having testing space in San Diego. And they directed staff to explore space in San Diego in lieu of Ontario. So staff have been working on this since the Board of Trustees meeting, and we're still challenged with identifying sufficient space that could replace Ontario. We're running into problems with finding the same seating capacity that we have in Ontario, and also with availability around those dates. So we'll be reporting back to the board on this. Can we go to the next slide, please? What I want to highlight here is where the sites change from the last meeting to the current recommendation that went to the board and was approved. Here, as you can see, when we came to the committee in June of 2023, we recommended testing, as for standard test sites, testing in Los Angeles downtown at the convention center. We've identified Pasadena. Pasadena has given us more space and at a better cost. And in terms of between Ontario, the board has directed us to look at Ontario, so it's either Ontario or San Diego. As for testing accommodation sites in San Francisco, we had Daly City and the San Francisco State Bar Office. We now have, we're going to keep the Daly City and use a space in the Judicial Council. We have testing space now in Sacramento for testing accommodations. We have the same space that we do the State Bar downtown office. Orange stayed the same. And again, the decision on the standard test site, whether Ontario or San Diego, has an effect also on testing accommodations, as you see here. Next slide, please. So the cost savings for February, just February alone, under this model is a cost savings of about $645,000. Where we're at now is we are going to bring this back. We're going to proceed with either Ontario or San Diego within these models, and proceed with this testing plan that is an in-person test at these locations. We're going back to the board in September for more discussion and recommendations for July 2024, which hopefully will include an option for remote testing. Next slide. So this went out for public comment before we went to the Board of Trustees meeting, and these are some of the themes that surfaced from the public comment. People are concerned with the significant financial burden, and that's the burden with travel and making those plans for going to these other sites. Additional stress, anxiety, and chaos. This is around having to travel to another site. And related to having to get a hotel for some applicants that were closer to a testing site. The disproportionate burden on people of color with disabilities or lower socioeconomic status, those traveling from further areas, impact on those with childcare or adult care obligations, disparate impact on those from other than Los Angeles or San Francisco, and disadvantages in San Diego. It's a large city and it has 3 law schools in that city. And so again, I mentioned that staff has continued to explore its options. We'll have a response back to the Board of Trustees shortly. And as for next steps, we are bringing this back, like I said, in September with recommendations for July 2024. Next slide. This was the recommendation that was adopted, and I've already noted what the next steps are. Are there any questions?
So part of the staggering between a 1 day in person and 1 day remote, do you need to make it so that the second day doesn't start until everybody has completed their testing accommodations window? So
Yes,
is that part of that?
yeah, that is.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
Yes. Hey, Amy, this is Robbie, very, very quickly, and thank you for that presentation. Are we states leaning on the NCBE? If everybody is doing their exams remotely, they have to let us. I mean, I think it's just ridiculous that they're insisting on in person when our day of the exam, which is just as impactful and we're just as concerned about maintaining the integrity of it, is remote. I mean, it would seem like if we all got together, they'd have to agree.
Well, we tried. I mean, we tried on multiple occasions. I mean, even throughout our whole exploration of the Blue Ribbon Commission, we came to them multiple times about the future bar exam and the current bar exam on this issue, and there is no, they've demonstrated no flexibility on this, not for this exam or for a future exam. So it's just where we're at. It's something that we really have to consider, especially as they move on to a newer exam, and then with the possibility that we'd have to develop our own exam. So it's going to be a very real challenge for us very shortly, as it is now.
This is an argument.
Thanks, Amy.
Sure.
Anything else from anyone? How are we doing on a quorum? We're getting close. I guess I have to look at the participants.
Yeah, we
Anyway,
still have quorum. I think, yes, we still have quorum.
We do.
thank you. Thank you for that report. Next, let's go back to the top, the work plan.
Okay.
And let's see, Audrey did, I was slightly misspoke earlier when I said that the current work plan doesn't mention requiring conversion of registered schools to accredited status. It does not in the way it used to. Let me show you a place, a item from, I think it was January 2022 agenda of ours. This is how it used to be described: continue to pursue mandatory accreditation for law schools. And what we currently have in the work plan is, I'll quit sharing. Can you put it up? Amy?
Yeah, I'll put it up right now. It was going to be part of my presentation, but
Okay. If I'm stealing any of your thunder or not mentioning something you want to mention, please.
This
okay.
was on the list about maybe
Yeah.
we need to tease this out the way it had been described before. So it's all
Yeah.
perfect.
Because what it currently says basically is talking about using the information we just received today. There. And it's less clear what we're trying to do. So staff think it's just reasonable to add back, maybe add back the item we used to have, and maybe keep this as well, but it's, is any objections to doing that?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, and then the other thing that wasn't in there at all is, maybe I'm wrong about this too, is redesigning, what I call redesigning the first year law students exam.
Yeah.
Questions like giving it, the two portions different weight, or maybe eliminating the essay portion,
Mhm.
changing the, I guess we call it a cut score.
Mhm.
And maybe either getting rid of the rescoring window or changing it in some way.
Yeah.
Anyway, that would be under ed or exams, I think.
Examination, yes. So, Paul, that was one of the items I wanted to raise with the committee, and it's exactly what you're stating, and that is, should we add an item where we discuss the exploration of the highlights that we heard today in Dr. Bolus's presentation? And it's 3 questions: whether we should adjust the weighting of the first year law student exam, eliminating the essay section completely, and also revisiting the passing standard. So the idea, my question to the group, and you just raised that, is do we want to call that out as 3 separate items, or one item about the first year law student exam altogether that we add to this work plan?
Well, my thought would be call out those 3 as among the possible things we want to look at, but leave room for other ideas we might have along the way as well.
Okay.
So it's focused, but it's not obsessed with just those 3 topics.
Okay.
And unless somebody disagrees, I'm perfectly happy with giving staff that homework to bring it back as we have this on every agenda next time.
All right. It looks like Jim raised his hand, right?
Sure.
I was just going to mention whether we raise or lower the standard, because I think there's options to go in both directions. The passing score.
Yes. This standard setting would help us identify which direction would be most appropriate. Either lower or decrease. I mean, increase. Okay, then we'll add that. The other thing I wanted to highlight as part of this is the parts of the work plan that changed from the last meeting to the current meeting. That area was really about the admissions rules. Some have been approved and advanced to the Board of Trustees, but as you may recall, the Board of Trustees reviews rule proposals in May and November. So the work plan has been revised to reflect that they've been approved by the CBE, but they're scheduled to go to the November 2023 Board of Trustees meeting. And these include special admissions, the moral character modifications related to disciplined attorneys that we heard today, and the grading rules. And so that's the primary change in this work plan from the last.
And you've adopted the practice of highlighting the changes so they're easier to see?
No, I have not, but
This has some bold in there.
Okay, the bold is when we've completed something.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of a celebration in bold. So I can add highlights for the changes, though. That would not be a problem.
And make it easier to just review it very quickly.
Okay, will do.
It gives me an idea for another drinking game.
All right. So that's my
What's
update on the
next?
work plan.
Yeah, who would have thought that would lead to a lap referral?
Mhm.
The July bar exam.
Okay. That's me again, and I have just a few highlights about the July bar exam. There's in the PowerPoint that we have, I think either Viviana or Devin. I just want to highlight a few stats for you. I believe it's slide 2 or 3 in here.
It might be 3.
And so the exam was held at 15 sites across the state on July 25th and 26th. And we had a total of 8,460 applicants that were approved to sit for the exam. 7,910 sat for the entire exam. We had 513 no-shows and 37 partial takers. So compared to 2022, we had 315 more applicants that this exam than we did in 2022. In terms of the proportion of no-shows and partial takers, it's very similar to our patterns. 23 appears very similar to 2022. So it was a very big exam. We had test takers test and finish that exam up to Monday, July 31st. So we had some people with extended time that's finished testing on that day. So it was a lot. We had a lot of applicants and a lot of staff that supported this all the way through July 31st. And that continued because we started, as you all know, with calibration. Our second calibration for this exam is tomorrow. And I think a few of you are participating in that tomorrow. So thank you. Any other questions about the July 2023 exam?
Okay,
Okay, you can take it down, Viviana, because I don't have any slides for my section about, there was an update on the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations. So as you know, the May 19th meeting of the Board of Trustees, the recommendations from the Blue Ribbon Commission were presented. Those recommendations have been forwarded to the Supreme Court by the Board of Trustees. And then at that same May 19th meeting, the board directed the development of alternative pathway with the Blue Ribbon Commission members who supported a bar exam alternative. So a draft of that is posted under recent developments to today's meeting. We got it Monday this week, so we were not able to amend the agenda to discuss that draft, but I've put out to all the members here some polling dates. If you've not responded to me, please do, so we can special set a meeting where we can actually discuss the posted report. But Esther Lynn and Alex Chan, of course, our representatives who were formerly Blue Ribbon Commission members, did receive the report if they wanted to share anything about that or anything at all related to the Blue Ribbon Commission activity that was recommended, or the Alternative Pathway Working Group. I don't know, Alex, if you're still on, if you had anything you wanted to say.
I don't. I'm still reviewing the report. It's rather detailed. Unfortunately, given the time constraint, I really have not had the chance to digest all the information. So, but I guess at the next CBE meeting, maybe.
So hopefully we're going to get a special set meeting. So the Board of Trustees will be hearing from this Alternative Pathway Working Group and this proposal at their September 21st meeting. So since we didn't discuss it today, I have sent out a poll to get your availability to have a special meeting. Some of you have responded and some of you have not. So if you could please respond to my poll, we'll special set a meeting to discuss it so the CBE's comments can be forwarded and heard by the Board of Trustees. Staff also has received the draft. Staff individually provided feedback on that draft proposal. And then there will be formal feedback in that September 21st agendized item about this proposal from the Bar Exam Alternative Working Group.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
Thank you. It's my understanding from Neil Gupta, who's our liaison from the Supreme Court, that they are very interested in hearing what, for instance, what we want to tell them about this thing. And they want us to be active participants in the development of the new bar exam. So we may have a more active role than we've had in thus far in the Blue Ribbon Commission process. And I also got the impression that they're waiting to deal with the Blue Ribbon Commission report until they receive this report on the bar exam alternative as well. So this is, you know, like we've said before, what the Blue Ribbon Commission was tasked with is, you know, fundamental to what we do and our assignment, if you will. So it'll be when we get this meeting together, if you can attend by any means, please do, because everyone's input is important. And if you have some thoughts, if you write them out in advance, we can combine them perhaps into a written set of comments that will, if it comes soon enough, we'll go back to both the task force, but definitely to the Board of Trustees and then hopefully to the court. it'll be one of those drafting and public exercises that we will find both amusing and frustrating, but I think we need to do that for this. Any other comments or questions?
I will say, I think because Dolores's term is not over till October, could be another chance if we special set a meeting soon for her to participate. So that would be nice.
Yeah, hopefully she realizes that. Oh, she's still here. Okay, so.
Oh, you know what? David had stolen my thunder. I was going to announce, and he already did, the chair for the next Committee of Bar Examiners year starting in October is going to be Dr. Michael Cow. The vice chair is Alex Chan. We do have new members coming in, Justice Masawala, Judge Renee Raina, and then returning to the Committee of Bar Examiners, Alan Yelkelson. So, but David kind of already spoke about that.
And that raises a question for me. So did we decide we're not going to have an orientation for all of the members? You'll have a separate non-public one because it'll be less than a quorum for the new members only? Is that the approach we're going to take?
I think Amy and Tara, when they spoke to you about that, I think that was their approach.
They were going to do that? Is that what they liked it?
Yes, so the day before, yeah.
Yeah. So unless we get to the point of a quorum, I suppose if any current members feel in need of a refresher from, on the sort of nuts and bolts of how the committee works, could they let you know and ask to be included in the orientation?
Sure, yes, of course.
Okay, so if you find yourself in that position, just let Amy know, or yeah, I guess Amy and Tara are doing it. You're saying, or
Right.
no?
Well, we'll all put it together. I just know that they spoke
Okay.
to you about it last week. So.
Okay, and then planning wise, Michael, do you think we're looking at a planning meeting in December? Is that your intention, or just so we know, how much time to dedicate to and make sure we're available for that?
And December will be a in-person meeting, so.
2 days in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Well, hopefully we can repeat that again. That's one habit I was hoping to instill, rather than waiting until the middle of the year in January, doing our planning session closer to the beginning. So I think that is everything, isn't it?
David had asked Tara to come back and with some provisional licensure program numbers, so she has a quick overview of that program. I know he had to exit out, but that was a follow-up from last meeting.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Viviana, could you share the slides? I think it started at 18. Oh. Thank you. And so let's be really quick so you can go to the next slide. So we just brought the data for all of the provisional licensure participants by both pathways. So we have the pathway to licensure and the 2020 graduates, those that are still active in the program, and then those in the pathway program that have been licensed. So next slide. Thank you. So here we have the ethnicity data for both pathway and the 2020 grads for all of the participants. So we've had a total of 768 in the pathway program and 808 in the 2020 graduate program. You can see, so the white was the majority for the pathway program, Asian was the next, and then for graduates, it was the Hispanic and Latinos. And next slide. And so this is the gender data for the same group. So the total of the PLP participants for both groups, and for both groups, females were the majority, but just barely in the active pathway. Okay, next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the total. So this is the active for the ethnicity data. Again, here you can see for the pathway folks that remained the same, where white being the first and Asian being the second. For the graduates as well, white being the first and Hispanic and Latino being the second, although the difference between the two has decreased a bit. And we currently have 151 pathway PLP applicants and 126 2020 grads still active. And next slide. This is the one. So here again, so female are still more prominent in both, but it's closer 50% compared to 49% in the pathway. Okay, next slide. And the last cohort, so these are the folks that were licensed through the Pathway to Licensure group. So we have a total of 591 people here. Again, the data stayed consistent where we have white being the first, the most prominent, and then Asian being second. And the last slide. And we do have females still being the majority at 55% and males being 43%. Thank you.
Thanks. Could you email these slides to David so he gets that information?
Sure, we can get that done. Thank you.
Okay. Is that it then?
That's it. That's officially all from report from director. Thank you.
Okay. So we still have a closed session to go into. We will, each of you should have, who needs one, should have received a link earlier today from Audrey, right?
Yep, from me. Check your email. I sent it
So
earlier.
we're gonna go over there, as we always do. We will keep this open public session Zoom meeting open, simply so that I can come back at the end of the closed session and report that we have concluded it. We do not expect to be reporting out any actions from the closed session, but you know, you never know. Very unlikely, but we will be back to tell you how that worked out. So everyone, if you want to, and be sure you actually leave this meeting so that there's no way that the sound from the closed session can leak into this open session, please. I'll see you over in closed session in a minute. Oh, we're gonna need help.
Paul, IT is on their way.
Okay, thanks. obviously. Okay, are you hearing me, folks?
You can.
Yep.
No, I'm not hearing you. So turn down my speaker. Okay, you're hearing me there? Yep, I got a little bit of an echo. This is Paul Kramer reporting that at 5:52 p.m. The committee just a minute ago adjourned its closed session, and we have nothing to report out from that closed session. And we've concluded all our open session business. So with the caveat that there will be probably a special meeting in the next 10 plus days or so to discuss the one item that came up after the posting deadline for this meeting relating to the Blue Ribbon Commission. That will certainly conclude today's meeting, which is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.